He told me he was still a child, only 6 or 7, the first time he encountered wolves. He was looking for shelter from a storm when he stumbled across a den. Not knowing any better, he entered the cave and fell asleep with the pups. The she-wolf had been out hunting. When she returned with the food, she growled and snarled at the boy. He thought the wolf was going to attack him, he says, but she let him take a piece of the meat instead. Wolves are not the only animals he lived among. He says he made friends with foxes and snakes, and that his enemy was the wild boar. He says he spoke to them all in a mix of grunts, howls, and half-remembered words. I couldn't tell you what language it was, but I did speak. Rodriguez told me this with an absolute confidence, as if nothing could have been truer. The fact that I might find it implausible didn't seem to worry him. It was the one moment when he showed absolutely no concern for my reaction. There was no blushing, no adolescent timidity, or odd, incoherent humor. Indeed, if there was one thing Rodriguez seemed to know for sure, no matter what other people thought, it was that he had lived a better and happier life in the wild. He was able to communicate more to wild animals than he would be able to communicate to another human being. That shows you a sense of disconnect. When you can communicate across species better than you can communicate to your own people. And that's an element of society being in the wrong there. This guy's gone to great lengths to try and come back into society, to try and become part of society. But it's not a welcoming place. The complexity of his interactions with humans would later grate against the remembered simplicity of his dealings with the animals. When a person talks, they might say one thing but mean another. Animals don't do that, Rodriguez told me. In early 1965, a park ranger reported to the police that he'd seen a man with long hair dressed in a deerskin roaming the Sierra Morena. 3 mounted officers were sent to search for him. Rodriguez says they found him eating fruit under the shade of a tree deep inside the Sierra. It's like the Buddha meditating underneath a tree, but in this case, instead of him finding enlightenment, the police find him. What a dangerous criminal, sitting under a tree, eating fruit. Normal people don't do that. Normal people wear ties and work jobs to pay bills, to buy shit they don't need. Didn't this bigot know he was supposed to live off of corn syrup, deprive himself of sleep, and die of stress? How absolutely dare he? He remembers the men dismounted their horses and tried to talk to him, but Rodriguez didn't know how to respond. He understood their questions, but he hadn't spoken in 12 years, and no words came. He ran. The officers caught up with Rodriguez easily. They tied his hands to the saddle of one of their horses and dragged him off the mountain. Rodriguez told me that he howled as he left the hillside. An anthropologist commenting on this case said that he was at first utterly unadapted to social norms, seemingly immune to the cold, and walked with the hunched, bow-legged gait of a monkey. The anthropologist moved the young man into his family home in Lopera, where he taught him how to dress himself, how to eat correctly, and how to pronounce words. He even arranged football matches so Rodriguez could play with the other local children, but Rodriguez resisted. I would try to run back to the mountains whenever I could, he told me. I didn't feel comfortable among humans. Again, I'm pretty sure the furries would have a field day with this, or the otherkin. Those are separate things, right? So yeah, there's more than one Tumblr community that would have a field day with this case and probably fetishize it and wreck the natural wholesomeness of a connection to nature, which people who have been indoctrinated by modernity don't have a healthy way to relate to nature. Things like the otherkin thing of being a wolf in your head. These are unhealthy attempts at connecting with nature that doesn't really have any substance behind it. Something that would have a whole lot of substance behind it is like traditional pagan nature worship, where it's not just something in your head, but if you have like a community going on with this and rites and traditions that have been practiced for a very long time, that represents a meaningful connection between your people and the land, or your people and the time of year, something like that. That is a real connection to culture. And I think things like being an otherkin in your head, as laughable as it sounds like, is an attempt for people to try and reach out for something substantial, reaching out to fill that hole that is there from the absence of any real culture, of any substantive culture, and of any substantive connection to nature as well. You can clearly appreciate the profound damage done to this poor man by not being forced to socialize with boring little shitbags as a full-time job for 13 years. While Rodriguez stayed at the convent, he worked on construction sites in and around Madrid. The nuns had hoped this would prepare him for society, but it didn't help much. I never had any idea what I was supposed to do, he told me. What an idiot. I mean, everyone is born for exactly one reason. It's this. There's a pyramid that has a whole bunch of buzzwords in it, and it says a whole bunch of things in the different levels of this pyramid, like tax revenue, central banks, interest revenue, world financial control, think tanks, world resource control, corporations, and it has a bunch of corporate symbols like Walmart, McDonald's, Pepsi, the Apple logo that's all gayed out with a rainbow, world population control, government, media, education, debt slaves, birth control, school, labor, taxes, debt, and retirement. You are here, and it has an X marks the spot at the bottom of this pyramid with debt slaves. And there's pictures of a bunch of cattle that are in the two bottom corners of this pyramid. The one reason that you are born is to be cattle, to be debt slaves for those who control you. At the beginning of 1967, Rodriguez was sent to do military service in Cordoba. He didn't last long. He fired his gun during a training drill and almost killed a member of his platoon. He was discharged and returned to the hospital in Madrid. On his return, he met a fellow patient who convinced him to go to the island of Mallorca, which was then turning into a tourist destination for people from all over Europe. There would be lots of work, the man told Rodriguez, and he could finally have some independence. As soon as he arrived on the island, his traveling companion stole his suitcase and the little money that the nuns had given him and left him stranded in a hostel. The owners, who thought Rodriguez was pulling a scam, called the police. Luckily, the nuns had called ahead to warn the local constabulary of my arrival, he told me. Instead of being arrested, he was put to work to pay off his debts. So he got screwed out of his money from a lying son of a bitch, and he had to be put to work to pay off the debts that he got into from someone screwing him over. There's another good image that is included in the article where it has a guy that's in a pig mask that has a big top hat on, and he's holding a couple of signs that say, "Your tax dollars at work will bail out the banks. Thanks, Obama," with a dollar sign. "Work harder, you workless debt slave." In the following years, he held jobs as an assistant chef, a barman, a bricklayer, and a road sweeper. Because he didn't understand money very well, his bosses often underpaid him and took advantage of his naivete. For a while, I was selling marijuana without knowing. My boss told me it was stomach medicine. People would come to the bar and ask for medicine, and I'd give it to them. I guess he really did have a purpose. Just imagine how much time he wasted running around in deerskins, eating fruits under trees, when he could have been making good money selling weed. Or making his boss good money. Whatever. So much progress. Juan Font, who worked with Rodriguez on building sites on the island in the 1970s, remembers him as mischievous and funny, but easily exploited. He was a good person and a hard worker who we all respected, he told me over the phone from Mallorca. I remember he loved to sing. He had a great voice, but it was hard to believe his stories of living in the mountains. They just seemed so unreal. LMAO, singing. What a faggot. You know what makes money? Selling weed. You know what doesn't make you money? Singing like a little faggot. Maybe we can find a doctor of reason, science, humanism, and progress to explain how this guy turned into such a big pussy. Jose España, a biologist and specialist in wolf behavior who knows Rodriguez, believes his experience was probably comparable. It's very possible for humans and wolves to coexist, España told me. But do I believe that every time he called the wolves, they came to him, as he says? Well, that's more debatable. Canines coming when called? Lol, no, I don't believe that. Quote attributed to this expert guy. Certainly, the wolves would have come to Rodriguez when he had food. Marcos is what I would call a periphery wolf, tolerated by the alpha and by the rest of the pack because he posed no threat, España said. How he chose to interpret these interactions, however, is most likely a case of selective memory. The boy would have projected his social needs onto the animals and imagined relationships with them. When Rodriguez says the fox laughed at him, or that he had to tell off the snake, he gives us a version of the true reality, what he believes happened. Wait a second, is this like objective truth, or are we talking like Jordan Peterson truth here? He gave us a version of the reality that's actually his opinion. Oh, no, it explains it here. Or at least how he explained the reality to himself. That's not truth. That's not how you explain. Truth is what happened. What you're trying to explain here is a perception that is a fabrication that distorts the truth. You're talking about not the truth, but referring to it as the true reality. No, that's just confusing. You don't know how to words, good sir. Anyway, Marcos's mind was so desperate for social acceptance, so instead of understanding the animal's presence as incentivized by the food, he thought they were trying to make friends. I don't really agree with what this expert is talking about here, because even though he might be an animal expert, he is not an expert on human psychology. And this is like, even at a very basic level of human psychology, there is more to human need. There's more to mammalian social need than just the kitchen cabinet, than just growing an attachment for whoever provides food. There are social needs as well. Social warmth, protection, socialization, where you get pleasure out of the interaction from someone who's enjoyable to be around. Yes, unlike humans who make friends for totally enlightened, selfless reasons, and not trying to get food or some other material or social benefit, especially these days. Thanks, expert guy. I'm a biologist, and basically fuck you in the 15 years you lived with wolves, attributed to expert guy. Rodriguez left Mallorca in the 80s and moved to the south of Spain, where he worked in a series of jobs. Anything that didn't involve reading or writing, he said. He was at his local bar almost every day, getting drunk and playing the fruit machine. I assume the fruit machine in this context means a slot machine, like he was gambling. This was the time that Marco's life passed in a blur of alcohol and odd jobs. Ah, yes. Finally, a heartwarming end to a heartwarming tale. The man is finally liberated from the corruption of the natural world and returned to his original state of innocence and grace through alcohol. A man truly redeemed. Rodriguez could not understand how his story could be met with complete indifference for decades, only to make him famous 40 years after Janer first wrote about it. To him, all this newly discovered adulation seemed just another hurtful, incomprehensible quirk of the human mind. You know, at first they didn't want to listen to a word of what I was actually saying. Now they can't stop listening. What is it they actually want? Lol. We want entertained, you stupid wolf retard. Are you not entertained? Okay, I'm done being cute. Reader, I want you to take a good long look in the mirror. Except you probably don't have a mirror on hand. If you were to get up and go near one, you probably couldn't continue reading this article. So fine, whatever. I assume you have a relatively new computer with a camera on it, watching you all the time, and you don't even have the good sense to tape it. So I want you to click on the menu in the bottom left, type in camera, and open it, or just open it with this link. He has a link in the article. So he's making it really convenient for the bug men out there who can't even be bothered to type shit in and are just pleb tier point and click fags. If you really can't figure out how to look through your PC camera, click this link. There's no link in this. This is an audio description. Mobile users, I don't know. Take a selfie. Whatever. Take a long, hard look at yourself in the camera. Answer the Wolfman's question. What is it you actually want? What is your time even going into? Is this really necessary in the hunter-gatherer sense of the word? If it is, then I guess you must be really poor, which means that your use of your own time actually has some inherent meaning to it, so I guess you're lucky if necessity has freed you of purposelessness. Otherwise, though, tell me, honestly, do you not spend most of your waking hours chasing after things that you don't need? Was this Wolfman not happier without even a percentage of the things you burden yourself with? Why, then, do you not shrug off these burdens? Am I telling you to say, fuck it, and just go full primitive? I don't know. You figure out your own business. Whatever you do, you should give up the things you don't need. You need some goal to your existence, though, beyond just surviving another day. The only reason I haven't gone full primitive is because I've been burdened with knowledge. I know what I have to do with my life, and I couldn't forget it if I tried, and I've tried. It always comes back to bug me, so that's the way things are, and the way things should be. I would be much better off sitting under a tree with a full stomach and an empty mind. This present world is a rebellion against the natural order. It is less than the natural world. We are made less by living in it. This is not progress. This is exile.